Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag-and-drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Fast Times at Ridgemont High is over. If we don't get some cool rules ourselves, pronto, we'll just be bogus too, get it?
Universal Pictures presents everything you always wanted to do in high school with everyone you always wanted to do it with.
Hey, bud, let's party.
They're the students of Ridgemont High. Brad Hamilton, the fast food king.
I shall serve no fries before their time.
It says 100% guaranteed, you moron.
Mister, if you don't shut up, I'm gonna kick 100% of your ass.
Charles Jefferson, a man with a mission.
Oh, gnarly.
Linda Barrett, not exactly the girl next door.
Awesome. Totally awesome.
And Jeff surfs up Spicoli.
People on moods should not drive.
What season is it, Andy?
Wow, Pete. It is our 11th season. 10th anniversary, 11th season of this show.
Huzzah. We've gone from posting just one meager podcast episode a week called Movies We Like to posting 300 episodes a week across various and sundry next reel family of podcast entertainment nuggets. It is a real mountain that we have climbed here. We are honoring our 10th anniversary series this year with some I think some just fantastic movies, most of which I haven't seen.
Right. I think that's a fair thing to say for me, too. I think when we added up all 48 movies that we're going to be talking about over the course of this whole season, I think I had seen 16 of them. So a lot of this is going to be new territory for both of us. And I'm really excited because there's a lot of things that look really interesting to me.
I think so, too. I'm really excited about all these movies. I have seen the movies in our first series, however, the series that we're kicking off with. This is 80s comedy movies.
It's specifically 80s comedy with Heckerling and Coolidge.
Hey, that's right. That's right. It sounds like an afternoon
law firm.
Talk
Actually,
show. Or you're right, a law firm.
It was actually 80s comedy with Coolidge and Heckerling, I think is the way we worded it. But
Coolidge, Heckerling, and Comedy Associates at law.
Coolidge, Heckerling, and Comedy Associates.
I like to think they would both appreciate this.
It'll never get old. Now I want to create a shirt that has Coolidge, Heckerling, and Associates as a law firm.
Yes.
As kind of a tie-in to this. Because, who doesn't want that?
I have just the font.
Oh, let's do it.
Make a note. We are kicking it off today with Fast Times at Ridgemont High, 1982, iconic teen sex romp. I'm glad we're opening with this movie. It's been a long time since I've seen it, and I feel like we bring to it our respective baggage.
We're going to bring some baggage. Well, and for this whole series, I think certainly that's going to be the case. Like, I'm curious to see what we both say about that, because we're going to do Fast Times, Valley Girl, which is Coolidge's film, Johnny Dangerously, going back to Heckerling, Real Genius, back to Coolidge, and ending with Look Who's Talking, back to Heckerling. Mm-hmm. So I think that there's going to be some interesting 80s baggage we're both bringing to this. I think in many ways, these two directors defined, for me, and I'm curious about you, but defined a lot of the comedy that I wanted in the 80s. Weirdly, it's probably not the movies that you think of from this lineup, but I do think that there's a lot of stuff in here that they were doing at this time, and I really enjoy.
You're saying there are movies in here that I would not anticipate are the movies that you wanted from your 80s comedy?
Let's just say Johnny Dangerously might be the one on this list that I loved at the time more than anything else on this list.
That's a riot.
I'm curious to revisit it because I want to see how it holds up, because boy, did I love that movie.
Very curious. I feel like that movie had, it just had some nods to just physical and visual comedy that I feel like I really connected to at the time. And I wonder if it holds up. For Fast Times, however, my rewatch of this movie, I find it overrated. But this is the thing. It's got an incredible cast of young actors. They all went on to do better things, and I think it keeps this movie alive. But for me personally, as much as I watch it now, and I understand how the critics find it rough in many ways, it has such a soft spot in my heart because this is one of those movies that I wanted to see so badly. I mean, I was like, 9 or 10 when this came out, and I couldn't see it for a number of years. Like, everything I could do. I did everything to try to sneak out and see this movie, and finally saw it on videotape some years later, and I felt like a triumph, to the point where I think I don't even know if I watched the movie for the movie because I was a dumb kid. I just watched it because it was scandalous. So scandalous. And so it has a real soft spot in my heart because this is a movie I like to feel like I won with this movie eventually.
See, you were so much cooler than me as a kid. I was very much a very prudish type of kid, and I would never have even, I doubt I even knew what this movie was, because it was just not in the wheelhouse of the sort of things that I was looking for or conversations I was even having with me and all of my nerdy friends. Like it was like, I was too busy, playing Dungeons and Dragons or whatever else I was doing at that age.
Mm-hmm.
Totally missed this whole thing. And I think that I caught some of the TV version at some point, but I never saw the whole thing. And it wasn't until college that I actually finally said, I should watch this movie. It's been talked about often enough. And I don't think that I clicked with it as much then as weirdly I did now. So for me, this film has done nothing but improve with age. So I come into this really liking this movie.
I love it. I love it. This is going to be fantastic. For me, I had a guy who, my babysitter when I was a kid, was a guy by the name of Tony Marzavis. The whole Marzavis family, they were all older than me and they took turns babysitting. But Tony Marzavis would come over and he would tell me about this movie, much like a bedtime story. It was like you can imagine me in The Princess Bride. Like, oh, is this a kissing movie? And he would come over and say, I'm going to tell you about sex now, as told through Fast Times at Ridgemont High, because he was like 18 and this was his life. He was Mike Damone. My babysitter was Mike Damone, is what I'm telling you. And so that's how I learned about this movie. And so it was like I ran the gauntlet to see this movie. I can't wait to hear why you love it so much.
Well, I can't wait to talk about it more. Before we do, this movie was rated R when it came out. According to commonsensemedia.org, it's because it is a teen movie full of sex, drugs, and misbehavior. And our conversation will be covering all of that. Want to watch this movie and help us out? If you see an Apple or Amazon link to it in our show notes, you can click on it, which will take you to their site where you can rent or buy the movie. And when you do this, we get a little bit in return. Win-win.
We're also up in our game in the merch store, everybody. We've got new products for every series this season. You can check it out at truestory.fm/TNR merch. You can get shirts and stickers and mugs and masks and pillows. Pillows? With everything that we're coming up with. We've got the new Next Reel vintage classic original logo, both light on dark and dark on light, is available now as well. Get it while you can.
Don't forget to subscribe to all your favorite shows in their own individual feeds. We're moving out all of the shows into their own feeds. So if you want to hear Trailer Rewind or The Film Board, go into your podcatcher of choice and make sure you're subscribing to them individually. That will help us all out as we start migrating all of the shows out from the Next Reel umbrella.
Everybody knows podcasts are better when they have homework, don't you think? We are going to start featuring audio reviews from you. All you have to do is email your 30-second audio clip to reviews@truestory.fm as soon as you watch the film, and we might just showcase your voice in the show. Get to them quickly, though, because we record early. So the sooner you get your clip in, the more likely it'll end up in the podcast. Again, reviews@truestory.fm.
And that's for any movie that we're talking about this season. And you can find the full season lineup over in our Letterboxd HQ. And if you are a fan of Letterboxd, you can get a discount on your pro or patron membership. Go to thenextreel.com/letterboxd. It'll take you right to their page and you can get 20% off. And it works for renewals as well.
Hey, I have to tell you, we were approached over our July break by a number of potential advertising partners that were asking for us to start embedding their ads in our shows. And they were offering us money to do that. But at what cost? At what cost? The cost is, frankly, your privacy. The tools and technologies that they were offering to allow us to do this and were offering to pay us to do this would be a pretty robust privacy violation, and we didn't care for it. And so we don't do that. We don't sell your information. We do the things that we think are important to help grow this community and support our time and effort as a giant team. And we could use your help. So here's how you can do that.
We actually have 2 membership tiers. You can become a one-reeler or you can become a 2-reeler.
One-reelers get to vote on our weekly Saturday matinee polls to choose the list topic based on the movie we're talking about each week. If you were already a member, you could have already voted on the list topic for Fast Times at Ridgemont High already.
And if you're looking for more, consider joining at the 2-reeler tier. two-reelers get early access to every episode, and they also get so many bonus episodes. Seriously, it is kind of ridiculous how many bonus episodes we are now releasing.
There is a monthly member bonus episode that fills in a gap from one of our series. There's the monthly Flick Chart re-ranking episode where Andy tries to Shanghai my feelings about 2001, and all I want to do is get more Prince on the list. And this season, we're adding this new members-only episode at the end of each series. Members get a series finale that we're calling Retake, where we go through what we've gleaned from the films in that series.
Members also get to vote on what we're going to be talking about in those member bonus episodes.
But wait, there's more. Members can watch the live streams as we record our shows and even access the live streams from previous shows anytime they want.
Members get extra super secret members-only channels in Discord.
And now, members also get stickers. That's right. You signed up, we're going to mail you a couple of stickers from our merch store. Just another way of us saying thanks for your support.
Just head to truestory.fm/TNR membership to learn more about these membership tiers. Membership at the two-reeler tier costs $5 a month or $55 a year. And membership at the one-reeler tier costs $1 a month or $12 a year. It's hardly a dent, and it means so much to us. So thanks.
All right, Andy. Fast Times at Ridgemont High, based on the book by Cameron Crowe, which I have not read.
I haven't either. I know. It's funny because this is a film I think I always forget is based on a book until I go into the film again and go, oh, that's interesting. I didn't know Cameron Crowe wrote a book on that. Here I am again, watching it again. Oh, the exact same reaction.
The thing about Cameron, if I can just, if I may, just as we start here. Cameron Crowe was born in 1957, right?
Sure.
Which means he was probably in high school in, what do you think, 57, 67?
He would have been. Remember, he finished, because...
he did. He skipped out of high school.
Out of school, and he went on the road writing rock articles with all these bands. That was the whole
told
thing
in Almost Famous.
Oh, exactly. That was kind of his upbringing. And after all of that, and my understanding is a little bit after he would have otherwise been in high school. So, as you said, what would that have been? 70?
Yeah, 75, 6. Yeah, somewhere
in there. That's when he actually...
This is what is so funny.
Went back.
He went back to high school, but he didn't go back to high school. He went undercover to high school. He went undercover. He's a teenager, and he went back to high school undercover as a high school student when he was really just been going to high school, Cameron. Just finish the job. Anyway, I thought that was really funny. He wrote this book, and it does, in fact, tell the story of Stacey Hamilton and Mike Damone and Linda Barrett and Mark Ratner and peripherally Brad Hamilton, Jeff Spicoli, and team. And it is this story of kids wandering through the world, learning stuff that is complicated with no adult role models that they can count on. I mean, at all.
Yeah, either the adult role models just aren't great role models or they're non-existent. And I thought that was actually a really interesting element of the film and presumably of the book. It's not that the adults don't care. It's just that we're looking at this world from the perspective of these teenagers. And in their world, that is their world. It is the world of the teenager. And these other outside influences are not really part of their world. I mean, yes, they're influences, but it's not their world. And I thought that was an interesting way to kind of do this. I mean, you never even see a parent, except for the one time when Stacy's mom comes in and says goodnight and then leaves. That's the only time you see a parent in the whole film. Otherwise, it's these kids dealing with all of this stuff that seems otherwise relatively grown up.
Even the managers at the stores, I think we see through Brad, Judge Reinhold, he's like, even his boss is effectively just a few years older than he is, right? I mean, it's an entire universe. In terms of world building, it is a world in which kids lead kids, And that is one of the things that I think can make this movie interesting. It's like Trolls if all the kids are trolls and they never see anybody else. That's what it felt like to me. It's such an insular universe.
Metaphor.
Like this universe is so, I don't know why Trolls get to me. That's ridiculous. It's like Mrs. Brisby and the Rats of Nim. And let me tell you why. It's so stupid. But it really, I mean, I think that's one of the things. It's one of those sort of fishbowl movies, right? And I think it's interesting in that regard. Now what goes on in the fishbowl? It's mostly everybody wants to have sex with everything.
Well, there's sex, there's employment, there's drugs, there's there's a lot of these sorts of things. There's friendships getting made and breaking. Like there were a lot of things that for me, like that's why this works, because it's these kids who are in these situations that feel to a certain extent much more grown up than they are. And Amy Heckerling says it in the commentary. It's in the title, Fast Times. These kids, like everything is going so fast and these kids are being thrust into it and they're just not ready for it. I think that that's a really interesting kind of perspective to take on this, where you have all of these youths trying to figure out like, what is it with sex and this whole thing with sex and the whole idea of like work and employment and how to do that and seeing kind of the journey that Brad takes over the course of his 3 jobs that we see him at in the film. And like the friendship between Rat and Damone and kind of the way that kind of gets broken because Damone ends up, having sex with Stacy, who Rat is totally infatuated with. And the way that Linda is like always talking to Stacy about, I mean, Linda's that older girl who's always dating even older guys, like college guys that you never ever see. And she's always talking about sex in ways that you're like, have you actually had sex? I'm not actually sure, because like, you're not sure if you've ever orgasmed. You're not sure, what's actually happened in the context of sex. Like how long does it take him to orgasm? Like these things in your conversation that I'm like, I don't know if Linda's ever had it, but she talks big and it convinces Stacy that, I need to do it, and Linda's saying, I started when I was 13. There's nothing to it. And like all of these conversations, just, I don't know, it just seemed so authentic. And I felt like it was these kids like trying to figure this stuff out. And then of course, everything with Spicoli, and I mean, he's hilarious. I love Sean Penn in this role. He just totally owned the role. But also, I don't know, I felt like there was this kind of sadness in kind of his story arc, because it's like he's totally a stoner. He has these dreams of being this a major surfer. And but it's like, even with the end titles that you get at the end talking about him, it's like, this is a person who's probably going to go nowhere. And if he goes anywhere, it's going to be a downward spiral of drugs and addiction. Like, it's like, there's some heavy stuff going on in this. Like the whole thing with the abortion, like I felt like there's a lot, this movie almost felt like it was really punching above its weight, because they were really trying to point out like the complexities of adult decisions in this world of high school students.
Yeah, and I think that's where what works for you doesn't work as well for me. That I'm challenged by the fact that this is a movie of B stories. Like, there's no one in here that I would say of all of these stories is the principal story. I guess it would be Stacy, but I think we spend as much time with her as we do with some of these other people. And so because it keeps bouncing around between these stories, I feel like this is a movie that wanders through this universe. And that's fine, insofar as an exploration of, kids and the complexities of their struggles in the 80s, that's fine. But it just didn't age as well for me, because it is a film that I think lacks focus. And what it is known for are the iconic beats. It's known for anytime Spicoli's on screen, because he's funny. He's like a non-malicious stoner that is just out to have a good time. And I really like that character. Like, I feel good about him. I think it's known for these comedic moments, right? It's known for these elements that are I think too loosely tied together, and don't really hold up as a strong, coherent film. And so that's where it just feels age for me. Not to mention the fact that the sex stuff, I don't know. I mean, you know me, Andy. I'm a big fan of the sex. And I think when done right, it can be funny and fun. And I think there are a lot of opportunities to do that. And this, for some reason, watching this movie felt straight up dated to me. Like, the fact that it was dated by a woman is interesting to me because she really tapped into the adult male's high school sex fantasy. Like, it just feels like, in times, weirdly sexist fantasy that surprises me. Like, I didn't find any of the sexual material as funny as I expected to. And that's kind of what I was going on with earlier, because like my memory of it was the sex romps were going to be funny, and they weren't.
Well, and that's why I think that this movie is better than some people remember, because I don't think it's designed to be funny in relation to the sex type of story. I think it's supposed to be kind of serious. I mean, this isn't a movie for youth. Like,
no,
I think that it's definitely a rated R film.
Yeah.
There's full frontal nudity. There's a lot of very strong conversations about a lot of these topics. And I mean, the first time that Stacy sneaks out to have sex with this guy that she meets at the pizza or the burger place that she's working, like it is a gross, dirty sexual encounter, right? Like, it's in a baseball. Well, I don't know what it is. My impression was it looked like a baseball dugout, but it's like a dugout on the beach. So it's like, is it a place that people just go sit on the beach when it's raining? Like, I wasn't sure what it is.
It's that, there's a lot of beach baseball. Don't you know? Haven't you ever played?
Yeah. That's exactly what it felt like. But it's definitely something like that. And they go there and it looks cold. It's all grimy. There's like graffiti everywhere. The way that it's shot, it's like muted colors. She's looking up, like you see her perspective. She's looking at like the dingy light that's flickering. She's looking at the graffiti of the surf Nazis that's written across the top of the thing. And Mike was here or whatever. Like all of these odd things that she's noticing as she's like losing her virginity. It just seems like this is the sad reality that she is thinking that she needs to get into. And it's like awful. And that's what I think the movie does so well, because she has this experience. She has the experience with Damone later in their little kind of pool house, I guess. And that also is completely unsatisfying because, he instantly comes. It's like over in seconds.
Yeah.
And that's where she gets pregnant, and it's awful. And that's why I think this story, like when you have this actual story between her and Rat and this connection that they actually have, and that there's actually sympathy and they care about each other, like that conversation with them outside of the morgue where, he's like, comforting her after she's kind of like freaked out by how gross the whole thing is. And like, there's a connection there, and they actually do like each other. And like, Amy Heckerling wasn't a big fan that Universal kind of forced those like end write-up bits on her. But it was a big thing for Universal Films. They loved doing it at the time. And so there they were. And but it was really cute. I thought, she and Rat were together and they still hadn't actually had sex. And it's like, you know what? That's actually really cute. The way that story kind of unfolds. And I liked that. And so, but yeah, I mean, I think the other big moment is, of course, Brad's fantasy when he's totally fantasizing about his sister's friend, Phoebe Cates' character, and that whole thing. And I think that's obviously that 80s boy fantasy. But of course, even that ends in a really awkward way as she, interrupts him accidentally as she goes into the bathroom. And that's, for me, that's the comedy of that whole bit when she does that. But I don't know. I feel like it's not designed to be something like, I'm trying to think of some of the obvious 80s comedies like Porky's or
right.
Up the Creek, like those sorts of things that just feel full on male gaze looking at hot women in bikinis. Oh, my bikini popped off. Like those sorts of things. Like there was a lot of that in the 80s. And I feel like there's some of that here, but I don't feel like it's digging into that as much, and because I feel like they really are trying to take it seriously.
Well, it's funny because I think we also have movies like I think a movie that would age better in that regard is like Revenge of the Nerds, right? I think
really,
right?
You think it ages better?
Well, I don't know. It's also been a long time since I've seen that one, but I feel like that one has.
You should watch it again before
I lay in on that comment. And maybe I'll feel exactly the same way. I think a lot of these movies, sacrifice the depth to be in this category. Right, to play in this category, because there is no place that suggests Fast Times at Ridgemont High is anything but cataloged with right next to Porky's and Revenge of the Nerds and Loose Screws and whatever. Here's another one that might be Risky Business. That's another one that I think probably ages better. So I don't know. I mean, I haven't done a Tom Cruise watch-a-thon in a long time. But I do feel like this one buries some of the opportunity for those heavier discussions in a kind of sloppy, loose narrative. I totally see your point, and I don't want to hate on this movie because I don't hate it. Like, my experience again is it's generally okay, but I look at it, I just feel like it doesn't achieve for me what it clearly achieves for you.
So here's a question for you, because you've brought this up several times about kind of the story structure and how we're not really following one particular person. Obviously, that is a structure that has been used before and after of this film. Is it just the fact that we're not getting enough of any particular character? Perhaps the fact that it's only a 90-minute film, they could have actually fleshed out these stories a little more to kind of give you that, or
possibly,
what?
But I think it goes back to the fact that the movie is again tied together in beats. Every time I come back to a conversation from one character set to another, it feels like I'm just getting again this sort of slice of life, week in the life of the American teen, and I don't feel like I have any significant substance that continues to move a story forward beyond their initial drive to have sex, learn about sex, etc. And maybe that's enough. Maybe I'm the one who's projecting too much of needing to have somebody with a real, drive for change or transformation over the course of the film. I don't necessarily see that. I think, let's take Stacey in particular. I think she's wildly underwritten for the journey that she should be taking, that she's demonstrably taking by her actions. She is somebody who is, it goes straight back to your point at the end. That title card carries way too much weight at the end of the movie for a transformation that I don't feel like we ever see. I feel like we see this person who's written as, she's a curious teen, becomes obsessed with having sex, learning sex. We get 3 minutes of this abortion subplot, and then we're back into beats of conversation that don't carry enough actual movement in the movie. I think you could say that about, or at least I would say that about everybody. I think Spicoli, Sean Penn gets top billing in this movie, and that's difficult to swallow because he's not a principal character in this movie.
Well, okay, so now this is a really interesting point that I think works definitely in your favor with the way that you feel about this film. In listening to conversations with Amy Heckerling, Cameron Crowe, some of the producers, the people behind the movie, and some of the behind-the-scenes making-ofs, commentary, things like that, the way that they're describing getting the film going, Spicoli was the lead. And they were saying, we have to make sure we cast him right because everything else will fall in place around him. That struck me strange because after I had rewatched the film and I was watching all of this, I'm like, they thought Spicoli was the lead because he's not. I mean, he's an essential character, but he's definitely like a B story thread that we have going on here. For me, it 100% was Stacey that we were following. Like, she's the one who has this emotional journey, this real character arc over the course of the story, more so than the others. And I connected with her story. She felt like the lead. If I were to say somebody was the lead of one of these stories that's following a bunch of characters, I don't know, Magnolia is the one that keeps popping into my head, but that sort of story where we're following a bunch of people. I feel like she's our primary character. And perhaps the issue that you're feeling so strongly with the way that the film just isn't clicking completely for you is because it seemed like the filmmakers thought Spicoli was the lead.
Yeah, I mean, that could very well be a part of it. You know, is it the promise that they make by putting, you know, Sean Penn as the first billed name on screen? You know, maybe that he's the first billed name on screen and we don't see him for 10 minutes. Maybe it's strange because his entree into the film as he, you know, falls out of the van and goes to class with Mr. Hand is funny. And that seems like all we get from him is relationships with Mr. Hand and a sportscast fever dream that I think is really great.
It is. But it's an interesting relationship, actually, I felt, between student and teacher, because Mr. Hand largely seems like the sort of teacher no one would ever want to have.
Hey, may I come in?
Oh, please. I get so lonely when I hear that third attendance bell ring and all my kids are not here.
Sorry I'm late. It's just like this new schedule's totally confusing. Yeah, I know that, dude.
Mr. Spicoli.
That's the name they gave me. Hey, you're ripping my car.
Yeah.
Hey, bud, what's your problem?
No problem at all. I think you know where the front office is.
You dick!
But in the end, I actually felt like there was actually an interesting development over the course of their relationship as we get to that final scene between the two of them as Mr. Hand shows up at Spicoli's house in his room to basically
quiz him,
go through all the school stuff with him for, as he said, 8 hours. Certainly didn't seem like it was going to be that long, but it was an interesting relationship. And actually, for me, I enjoyed the way that resolved that relationship. But I totally get what you're saying. It's like, is there going to be more to this? Because it seemed like a strange thing to focus on that didn't quite carry the weight that perhaps we were wanting it to.
Yeah. So Judge Reinhold is another one of those characters that I really like the part. I see these two as sort of parallel characters a little bit because Judge Reinhold, we're supposed to have this view of who he is, right? And it never quite locks for me either. And I don't know if it's because I've seen him more frequently in my, experience with Beverly Hills Cop. And he's kind of more of a doofus. He's got this sort of roller coaster of presentation in this movie. He opens and he's got the coolest car and he's got the leather jacket and everybody thinks he's cool. He can get guys jobs. It's kind of a feigned coolness though, because really he does occasionally have to go to work in a dumb but like Long John Silver uniform.
Well, that's like after he's been fired.
Yeah,
right?
after he's been fired.
Now he's at a crappier, like he keeps going down job-wise.
Yeah. He keeps falling. I really like that sequence when he's accosted by the businessman who says this breakfast was guaranteed and I want my $2 back, right? Like I think that was really funny, but it never quite locks for me that I just don't ever quite feel at home with Judge Reinhold in this part, even though I really, really like him as an actor.
Is it because he seemed older?
Yeah, well, this is kind of that movie, right? I mean, it's one of those movies where adults are in high school. And we've got a long history of adults in high school movies, but he is definitely the one who stands out the most for me.
He's one of the oldest, I think.
Was he 46?
But I mean, they did, like, Phoebe Cates and Nicolas Cage were actually, I think that they said those were the two who actually were teenagers.
Yeah, Phoebe Cates was 19.
Yeah.
And actually Jennifer Jason Leigh was 20. So she's
right,
barely,
she was 20.
Barely
right.
a teenager. I don't know.
But she looks
Cage.
like, I felt Jennifer Jason Leigh. I'm like, is she actually 15?
Yeah,
like she looked 15 in this.
100%.
She looks so little.
She looks 22 now. So, I mean, really, there's a scale.
Yeah, right. But going back to Judge Reinhold, I mean, this period, though. Like, I felt like he was one of those people that just was everywhere in the 80s. I mean, we've talked about him in Stripes, which came before this. And then there's this, Gremlins we've talked about afterward, Beverly Hills Cop we've talked about. And then he was like in Ruthless People, Beverly Hills Cop 2, vice versa. I mean, which was, that was about a point where it's like, it's not quite big. Sorry. he couldn't quite get the lead from there moving forward. And I don't think that his 90s were as good for him, but I felt like the 80s, that was definitely a strong period for him. And because of stuff like this, like I thought he was great. And I think that he carries it well. And when he's in those scenes, like the fantasy about Linda, like that scene actually plays really well. And, I don't know. I bought into him, even though he seemed older. And same thing with Damone, who also seemed like, I don't know.
Yeah.
As I looked at Damone, I'm like, is he the one who keeps flunking? And so he's like actually 22 in high school? Like, because he just seemed so much older. But anyway, I actually really enjoyed their performances.
I think I want to retract one point. I think of Judge Reinhold's part of his character. You're right. That one actually feels the most satisfyingly linear to me in this comedy. Every time we come back to him, there is another stage of his fall from grace. And I find that appealing in this movie. That's a great and astute point.
A fall from grace, which ends up redemptive, right?
Yeah,
he stops the person who's robbing him. So
yeah, exactly.
Actually,
which was a funny bit like that.
It is.
That works.
It is great. And I really loved how that also like tied Spicoli into that particular moment.
I know.
The two of them seemed, they have their moment at the beginning when Brad is like reprimanding them for not following the rules, not wearing their shirts, which for me, it was also really strange. Like they come into the restaurant and that's when they take their shirts off. Like, oh, now we're here. Let's take our shirts off. I'm like, so strange. But yeah.
So Robert Romanus says Mike Damone was 24. It looks like when he did this movie. So that's why he looked old. Judge Reinhold was 25. No, 23. Looks like. So yeah, there's a reason Damone looked older, because he really, really was. He sure sounded older.
He definitely did.
Didn't sound like he belonged in high school at all.
No.
So
I don't know where I saw him more. I know he had been in a lot of TV shows that I watched when I was younger, like Fame and The Facts of Life. He had some kind of recurring parts in some of those sorts of shows. But I don't feel like he's one of those actors that I saw much afterward. I mean, he's been nonstop busy. I mean, he's super, super busy with his career, but I feel like he was always like one of those TV actors, in just those little kind of bit parts that would pop up in shows I watched.
He is in a movie coming up called Genesis, The Future of Mankind is Woman, about the first female to be pregnant by parthenogenesis, with Meredith Baxter. What?
Wow.
Meredith Baxter. It's highly unlikely I'm going to miss this movie, but I just love the fact that it exists.
It's highly unlikely.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm going to miss this movie.
So it's highly likely that.
That's right. Didn't I say that? I said highly likely I'm going to miss this movie. Well, anyway, I'm not going to see this movie, and so that's a thing. But I remember being shocked. It actually brings it back. I'm looking at his credits right now. I'm a big fan of CSI, the crime scene investigation. Oh, who are you?
Are.
Ooh. He was. I remember seeing him in this. He was in an episode in 2014, and I remember it's one of those I know that face experiences, because he hasn't. He's older, but you can still tell it's him.
Yeah, absolutely. What did you think about Heckerling as the director here? I mean, this is part of our Heckerling and Coolidge series.
It sure is. The problems that I have of the movie that I don't connect with largely can be saddled on my disconnect with the direction of it, right? With the sense and sensibility of the film. But there is no doubt that she is this was a film that helped cement her as somebody worth watching. It wasn't, we'll hear when you talk about the numbers, obviously it is what it is. It's no Look Who's Talking, but it certainly is why there's a Look Who's Talking. You know what I mean? I think she's an able director. I think there are some things in here that I found were perhaps misses editorially, some cutaways for punchlines that didn't work for me, that I felt could have been a little bit more natural, that took me out of the sequence of humor, particularly cutaways to the younger siblings where the jokes just didn't quite work. Or in the banana or the carrot blowjob scene, there is this cutaway that goes back to, hey, get a load of this. And you've got this table of prepubescent boys who are all watching these girls teach each other how to give oral sex to carrots. And I felt like some of the timing was it just didn't land for me as well as I wanted it to. And I thought, what is it? What is wrong with that? Is that a direction? Is that just not catching it in the edit? I just felt like, hindsight is what it is, but there were some issues there. But I thought it was a great. There are some really wonderful long walkthroughs. The opening credits scene I think is really great. A lot of bullying in this high school, but I think the tour.
It was the 80s.
Yeah, it was the 80s. The tour of high school was really great. Like, I think it was a great way to bring us into Ridgemont High and was very, very effective.
I thought she did the montages really well as far as
Truly.
setting the world, both the mall, the school. Like, I felt like I knew these places because she just captured it so well with some of the things that she chose to film. So I enjoyed all of that. I loved the music. Like, Amy Heckerling has always been somebody who loves music. She was a little upset with her producer that her producer required her to put in a lot of more of the kind of the pop rock sorts of songs that she's not as much a fan of. She's definitely more of a punk person, but she did manage to get Oingo Boingo in, the Go-Go's, Led Zeppelin, which actually that came from Cameron Crowe because, they notoriously don't let anyone use their music. But because he had interviewed them, as we mentioned earlier, they did let them use one of their songs. Although it's interesting, he's talking about in that particular scene, they're talking about Led Zeppelin 4, and they couldn't actually, because of some licensing issues, they could not get a song from Led Zeppelin 4, so they had to play a different song. One of those weird little licensing quirks. But I love the music generally over the course of this film, and there's a lot. It's like 24 songs that are credited. No score. Apparently they had an issue with the composer who didn't deliver anything, so they just did wall-to-wall songs, which I thought actually worked even better because it just felt so much a part of this world.
Well, and the soundtrack that was released was incomplete. Like you say, 24 songs. You're absolutely right. There were a lot of songs on here, but this soundtrack made me really grateful for the times we are living in, Andy, because, if you subscribe to Spotify or Apple Music or one of these big services, there are people who have meticulously built playlists that make up all of these songs that were used in these great movies. And the fact that we can go and get access to all these musics, put them in a playlist as in movie order, I think is a real gift. This is one of them. The soundtrack or the soundtrack playlist is great. It is just great, and very grateful that we can do that now.
Do you have a particular favorite?
I think American Girl is the one that gets stuck in my head the most. It's the one that I'll be singing by the end of the movie again. But I love Oingo Boingo in there. Like, oh man.
Yeah, Goodbye Goodbye was a fantastic track to end with.
Great. So great. So
and actually the Go-Go song at the open, I mean, that was like, that really set the stage well for me.
Yeah, I think so too. This movie, I mean, you talk about Cameron Crowe and Amy Heckerling. This is as much a journey through, 80s teendom as it is a journey through 80s, great 80s, late 70s, early 80s music. Like, it is a love story for music.
Well, and I loved how, there were a lot of songs that they wanted to get, but the producers didn't want them to put it on there, or it was expensive or whatever. I loved how what they did instead is they used a lot of opportunities to put like posters up in all the kids' rooms of all the different other people that they wanted. Like Elvis Costello's in there, you got The Who, these different groups that are on the walls of some of the kids that I'm like, that's a great way to make sure that it's still included, even though you can't get the music for whatever reason. You brought up the whole thing with the carrots and kind of the practicing of the blowjobs and stuff. Were you weren't as much a fan of that? Did you say it was because there was no comedy in it?
Yeah, I guess I felt like it was, I don't know, maybe I'm changing my tune after this conversation a little bit on it, because I get what you're talking about, right? And I get thematically, this is an exploration of teens who really, I mean, they got to learn somewhere. And I imagine there are a lot of us who, when we were this age, had, a Tony Marzavis who we had to ask questions to and would tell us, the Phoebe Cates role. Like they would tell us things that weren't probably 100% accurate, but there was enough of a nugget of truth in there that we could learn and explore, in ways where there might have been shame to talk to an adult about these things. Like that feels legitimate to me, that experience. I felt like it was a bit much having them have that conversation the way they were having it, as like practically out in the open, no big deal, where everybody could oogle them from the room. I felt like that's a thing that is dated for me, because I think I just don't believe it. I believe that there are ways to get comedy in a way that might have been blocked a little bit more authentically. And so I just I didn't get it.
There are like variables that I might not be good at.
Like what variables?
Like, you know, giving blowjobs.
What's the big deal?
I never did it.
You've never given a blowjob? Never? Stace, there's nothing to it. It's so easy. Come on.
Gotta check it out.
Here. Relax your throat muscles. Here. Don't bite. And slide it in. Good. Try it again. Good. Push it slowly, in and out. You got it.
Okay. Can I ask you something and you promise not to laugh?
Sure.
Okay. When a guy has an orgasm, how much comes out?
A quart or so. No, I'm just kidding. Just practice. Not your tongue.
I guess I didn't really have that problem with it. The thing that I thought was interesting, though, is that it did feel very matter of fact. Like, it just felt like they were just there doing it.
Yeah.
And Amy Heckerling actually said that one of the producers was pushing her to make it more sensual, like, you know, close-up shots of their lips wrapping around the carrots and all this sort of nonsense. I actually really appreciated the way, and yes, there may be those issues like, why are they doing it out in public in the school cafeteria like this? But I really appreciate the fact that she just made it seem like a conversation between two girls. Like, it didn't seem like it had to be shot like hearing that. I'm like, oh, that's the male gaze. Like, that's this male producer pushing, you know, his worldview on how this should be shot. And I really am glad that Heckerling did not go that route.
I am too. Absolutely. I mean, I guess on the spectrum of things that could be funny / progressive, where she landed is fine. It's fine. And so
but I see your point.
I think what I'm coming to is like, pick a lane. You know what I mean? Like, there is a way to make that a meaningful, kind of impactful, funny between the two of them experience, and the male gaze part doesn't have to be there. That's the part that feels dated to me. It feels like, man, 15-year-old me thought this was hysterical. And also, maybe that's its biggest problem.
It was interesting there, you know, we do have the full frontal nudity of Damone as they're getting ready to have sex. And then, you know, we do have full nudity of Stacy's character, although she's kind of on her side. But that was a really interesting and contentious bit that Heckerling had with the ratings board, because, you know, they shot, apparently there was more of it, but they had to cut out of it pretty quick because the ratings board had a real problem that you had male frontal nudity. And Amy was like, well, you know, we can show a full frontal female nude, but not a male. And this is what they said. They said the male organ is aggressive. That was the ratings board stance on why male full frontal nudity was not acceptable.
My God, man, isn't that exactly Kristen Wiig's line in Bridesmaids when she is, I think she said, when she does her imitation of the penis and she closes one eye and leans forward. I think that's what she said. It's so aggressive. I don't know. It's been a while. That is really funny. That is really funny.
Well, and I think that speaks to kind of the way that these ratings boards would view things, and so much of it from the male gaze. The fact that probably, I'm assuming that the ratings board probably was largely male. I don't know. But regardless, just the fact that was the view, I think that speaks so much to just kind of the way that things are being made, you know, really interesting.
Yeah. It's fascinating.
To the point of like kind of that seriousness of the story, I felt like, I mean, I know you said that the abortion scene is dealt with in a very short, only 3 minutes of screen time, but I actually really enjoyed that the way that we build up to that, like the conversation that Stacy has with Damone outside on the track. It's kind of a a moment that I'm like, there's actually some power here. Like it's very matter of fact. They have this conversation. He's, of course, the denier, doesn't believe it. But then he's like, yeah, okay, I'll help you out with that. And I actually liked how we see him actually trying to be the guy who's going to raise the money and help out, only to have it completely backfire. And then he becomes the loser, which was an interesting arc for him. What did you think of that sequence?
I stand by my earlier point. I think the challenge with this sequence is not the sequence as it is presented. It is the fact that most of the plot line around this beat is him trying to get the money, and not like, man, it gets just waved out of the film after this little beat. And this is probably the most important consequence that any of these kids could possibly face by their activities in the film. Let's take a listen.
Can I talk to you for a sec?
Well, now, Stacy, I'm doing business. Call me tonight, all right?
No, I gotta talk to you now. Okay?
Don't go away. Look at it. I hope this is important, because I could be blowing a big deal.
Mike, I just want you to know that I'm pregnant.
How do you know it's mine? I mean, we only did it once.
I haven't been with anybody else. I know it's yours.
Jesus. I mean, it was your idea. You wanted to do it. You wanted it more than I did.
No. Take that back.
All right. Take it back. Look, we got to do something about it. I mean, we got to get an abortion. My brother Art got his girlfriend one once. It's simple. I mean, it's no big deal.
Yeah. I got that plan. It's gonna cost $150 at the free clinic.
Doesn't sound free to me. I suppose you want me to pay for it.
Half, okay? And a ride to the clinic?
$75 and a ride. Okay.
Okay. Thanks.
You wrote this note, this tie-in to Mean Streets. What did she say in the commentary about that?
Well, it was just an interesting little side note that something that she felt captured so much of the world in Mean Streets was at the end, when you just see everything kind of closing. At the end of the film, you see all the shops closing. And so that became kind of an influence for her here at the end of this film, where, you see the mall closing, you see Brad closing up the gas station that he's working at. Like, everybody's kind of closing, and it's night and things are over. And it's just kind of like, as fast as things can be at times, there's this shutdown period. And I think that it was just something that she was taking, because Mean Streets is it's a pretty aggressive, intense film that Scorsese directed. And so I thought that was actually kind of an interesting element from that film to bring into this film that I don't think you necessarily read right away, but as you watch the credits and you see that kind of things closing, it does feel like I'm breathing out.
Well, and it goes exactly to your point about, or to, as we're talking about Heckerling as a director, like, that is a nuanced bit of filmmaking that adjusts this film for pace, and it lets us breathe. And it reminds us that as there was a beginning, this frenetic, long cuts through this crazy high school, there is an ending. And it does give us just a nudge of that storybook quality.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look at the film, I think, is generally great. It feels, as much as I tend to bag on the 80s, I have to admit, wink of nostalgia bubbled up for me with this movie. And I think it's going to be happening more and more as we get through this series. Those popped collars are so stupid.
Collars, Jordache jeans.
Yeah, Jordache jeans.
God.
I did find myself thinking, oh, yeah, I was there for this. I was there for this. Yeah. But it's a warm, how'd you feel about that? Like, did this movie take you back to a particular time and place?
Oh, totally the same place. Now, I was in high school, a little after this film came out, but it still brings me back to the 80s, because it was still 80s when I was starting high school. And there's definitely this feel of this world that, the way that people did their hair, just the look. the malls. I don't know about you, but malls, like seeing a movie with a multi-story mall, like would have blown my mind at this time. Because like we had like, it was a 1-story place. Like I don't think I even knew that a multi-store mall was a thing until much later in my life. So I don't know how closed off I was in my own little world, but it just like, but it did make me wonder, like, I wonder when multi-story malls really started. I mean, obviously they were around this point in time, and obviously it was California, but.
Well, we definitely had them in Colorado Springs. I mean, we had like Chapel Hills Mall and the Citadel Mall. And I mean, those were our malls. And I remember when they were built, because my experience of going to a movie theater and having to ride an escalator to get there was crazy to me. Like you park in one place and walk in and get on an escalator. And when you get to the top, there's the ticket booth. And that was crazy because I was used to, you know, the street side cinema. And so like that experience, I think is actually, I think they got that right.
Oh yeah.
You know, it just feels very much of a time, and it's of a time in a way that it feels very real. I think because the movie is made, you know, in the period, it's not looking back on and trying to be nostalgic. It's nostalgic because that's what we looked like. Sure, it's the extremes of those, but it's what we were doing. I mean, by the time you say high school, like you're right, we were in high school a little bit later, but for me, it had transitioned. I made it through popped collars of middle school and transitioned to oversized, like button-down shirts, braided leather belts, and pegged jeans, man. That was real.
Jeans. Pegged jeans. Way too much hair.
Ugh.
Mullets were actually a thing, too.
Dude,
I don't know why that was a thing.
Did you mullet? Did you mullet?
Totally. Everyone was mulleting.
Oh, I didn't mullet. But I did have very large hair. I have very full hair when I let it grow out. And so at my senior year, I went full flock of seagulls. Like they literally just took my hair up in the thing, wet shaved all the way around. And I had this weird Fido Dido thing flopping around on the top that was, if properly gelled, could flock of seagulls completely. So this was, I mean, you know, lived experience. That's another reason this movie kind of gives me a just sort of a warm fuzzy.
There are 80s films that film that the exact same stuff that feel dated. And that's what's so interesting about this, because like it comes across as so real. And I think that's just because these characters end up feeling like they're really living it. It's not trying to be ironic about it or anything.
Yeah, that's it. There is very little irony in this movie. It's like the movie has other stuff that's going on that it doesn't have to suffer much time for irony.
I felt the same thing when I saw Rat wearing the Popeye t-shirt. Like he totally is into that. I 100% believe that. Like there's nothing ironic about this. He just loves Popeye.
Exactly right. Exactly right. I do want to make sure that I name drop Nicolas Cage, if only because we get back-to-back Nicolas Cage vehicles in this series. That's pretty exciting.
It was funny because Heckerling was talking about how he would, I mean, because his part is, he's a friend of Brad's, right? Yeah. He's not even really a character. He had seen some of the other actors like Sean Penn doing like kind of improv sorts of things on set. And so he would try to do these things and it just was too big. And she's just like, settle down. You don't need to be doing this. You know, you're just this bit player. And then she saw Valley Girl the next year and she's like, oh, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I should have let him do some of those things.
I missed it. Missed it. It was fun. It took me a little bit to realize that we're looking at 18-year-old Nicolas Cage putting the sticker on the back of the guy in the opening credits and kind of wandering through the background. That was super fun.
It is fun to see him. So such a babyface little Nicolas Cage.
I know.
All of them are babyface. I mean, Anthony Edwards. You've got
Eric Stoltz.
Eric
Stoltz. And what's really funny is look, when you search for the trailer of this movie, like the YouTube trailer, for some reason somebody thought that SEO, I guess, would be well positioned by saying Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Eric Stoltz movie. Eric Stoltz is as much of a headliner as anybody else in this movie, I guess.
So
but it
funny.
was fun to see him. And
even Forrest Whitaker. Whitaker's the big football player, and it was like early. I think this was his first film.
Yeah,
it's so fun to see all of these faces so young, so early in their careers.
So we talked about Cameron Crowe going undercover in high school, which is awesome.
It is.
What else do we need to talk about getting it made?
Well, I just thought it was really interesting that when they were trying to figure out who was going to make this film, they actually, believe it or not, sent the script to David Lynch. Apparently, they thought, some of them were big fans of Eraserhead, and they thought, he would be a really interesting director of this, tapping into kind of this youth mindset. He actually read the script and said he liked it, but he said it's not really what he saw himself doing. But I'm like, wow, that would have been a really interesting vision of this young high school world to see David Lynch directing this.
You could kind of see this high school Blue Velvet experience. Do you get me? Like, I really feel it. I can really feel it.
There would definitely be an underbelly of darkness going on in that high school.
Yeah.
But I guess it was Amy Heckerling. She had done a short film called Getting It Over With, which I've poked around on the internet, cannot find anywhere. Maybe it exists somewhere, but I haven't seen it. But that short film is what won them over and brought her on. They still kind of felt like unsure. Like the studio is like, it's supposed to be funny, and there's all this stuff with girls crying and stuff. What's going on? And they actually sent John Landis to set to watch some of the scenes getting shot to film it. And he's just like, it's fine. Leave her be. She's totally fine. So luckily, John Landis was on her side. Yeah.
Aw, John Landis. John Landis. He's a real mensch. All right. We're going to be right back. We're going to talk about awards. You don't want to miss Andy's running the numbers. And of course, all of our final ratings and reviews. But first, we've got some credits. The next reel is a production of True Story FM. Engineering by Andy Nelson. Music by A.M. Beef, Oriole Novella, and Eli Catlin. Andy usually finds all the stats for the awards and numbers at the-numbers.com, boxofficemojo.com, imdb.com, and wikipedia.org. Find the show at truestory.fm. If your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, consider doing that for our show. Andy, I didn't even know that this had a television show, but not only that, it's a television show with people that I know.
And it's one of those where I think I did know it, and actually, and this speaks to me and the way that I came to this film. I think I knew about the TV show before I knew about the movie.
Seriously?
That's how repressed I was as a child.
Oh my gosh, Andy!
I never watched the TV show, but yeah,
the cast is crazy. In terms of just young people who are getting their start. In 1986, Courtney Thorne-Smith was in it, James Nardini, Dean Cameron, Patrick Dempsey, a young McDreamy, was in this.
And he played Damone. Yeah,
he played Damone. Exactly. Yeah. I thought that's really fascinating. Wallace Langham was in it as Ratner, and what an incredible get, Wallace Langham. And I don't need to tell you, Wallace Langham was in CSI. You know how much I love my CSI, Andy.
Jeez. Let's not forget Moon Unit Zappa.
Moon Unit Zappa was in this. Yeah, no, that was great.
And Ray Walston and Vincent Schiavelli returned as two of the teachers, Mr. Vargas and Mr. Hand.
Which is that it was all great. I have not seen a single episode, and I'm okay not seeing a single episode, but I'm glad that it exists.
Yes. It only had one season. It was not something that drew people in, I guess. Very short-lived show.
How did you do at award season?
It wasn't the thing that was being pushed. It wasn't the thing that people were drawn to for awards. At the WGA, Cameron Crowe did get nominated for Best Comedy adapted from another medium from his own book. He lost to Blake Edwards for Victor Victoria. And then, of course, in 2005, because this film is something that has lasted the test of time, the National Film Preservation Board, they did add it to the National Film Registry in the Library of Congress as being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. So obviously there is some feel that this film does represent something, and so it is on that. And that's, I guess, in context of a win, that would be the only thing that it won.
Okay. You think they watched it before they did that?
Hey, now.
How to do at the box office.
Well, Heckerling had $5 million to spend on this movie, which was about $13.1 million in today's dollars. That's a pretty strong budget for your first feature, really. This movie did open a limited run starting August 13th, 1982, opposite Friday the 13th Part 3 and the Star Wars re-release. This opened in 7th, and it never really got higher than 3rd place, but it stayed in the top 10 for 10 full weeks and did stay in theaters for another 10 weeks. The film ended up grossing $27.1 million, which is $71.8 million in today's dollars, so it made a handsome return, earning an adjusted profit per finished minute of $650,000. But perhaps the lasting quality of the story itself is why the National Film Registry added it. And Criterion Collection, it's in there now, so it certainly is something that has stuck around for people.
Did you watch the Criterion Collection version of this movie? Is that what you saw?
I did.
Oh, I did.
They actually also include the TV edit, which is actually longer. There's some additional scenes that didn't make it into the theatrical cut. I didn't end up being able to watch it, but I'm really curious because that is my first experience with this film. I didn't watch the whole thing, but I did see some of the TV edit of it. So I'm really curious to kind of look at it again.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I watched I got it through the Apple TV.
Yeah.
And it was, as I remember it, that was my cut. I think this is I think our conversation has improved my opinion of it. Not a lot, but enough. I think you did the yeoman's work of helping to ground me in this movie, Andy. I'm proud of you.
It's a film that I really feel is going to be something that I will continue to return to because I felt like I got a lot out of this story with these youths kind of starting to experience grown-up life. I really connected with it.
One of the reviews from our community said, this movie makes me feel like a dirty old man as I watch these young kids and all of the sex stuff. Did you at any point feel like a dirty old man?
No, although it's interesting because Roger Ebert certainly felt that way when he reviewed it. Like he really
he hated
was
it.
Against this film. He said it was a scuzz pit of a movie. Like he really hated it, was very upset with what they did with Jennifer Jason Leigh's character. And what was interesting is Jennifer Jason Leigh, she actually, and this seems fitting with kind of knowing the path of her career, she really was pushing them to make it even stronger. She really was like, no, let's really do this.
That sets up. But, after reading Ebert's review, may he rest in peace, it's not like he writes that review from the perspective of somebody who, is in any way sort of prudish. That guy's kind of thirsty for Jennifer Jason Leigh. Like, he likes her. Like, maybe likes her. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of hard to read. I think he should have some sort of a mature rating on the review. He likes her so much.
He commented at one point about Emma Watson in one of his Harry Potter reviews that made me raise an eyebrow going, Roger, what are you
sure you want to say that,
What
Roger?
are you saying here?
Yeah.
Roger. So there's definitely some of that. I didn't necessarily feel that way, but because I think for me, I didn't feel like I was a dirty old man, but I felt like this captured some of my mindset when I was young. So I think that was more where I went to. I think if anyone I identified with the most, it was probably Rat, because that was probably like the closest to kind of the kind of pathetic version I was when I was in high school and earlier.
You nailed it. For me too. Like, not just you. We're both. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right, we're going to come back and we're going to dive into our Letterboxd reviews. But first, we've got to talk about what we're doing next week. This is 1983's Valley Girl from the great Martha Coolidge.
Have you seen it? Great. Send us your thoughts in a 30-second audio clip, and we just might get your review into the episode. Send your audio clip in an email to reviews@truestory.fm.
Ow, dang me, how could you?
For sure. Brody. Besides, it's totally gnarly birth control.
I can't stand it. Okay, so he's awesome.
Valley Girl.
She's out there somewhere.
This is the story of a boy from Hollywood who never dreamed the girl he'd want most was down here.
Hello.
Hello. Who invited you?
Oh, wow, you mean you have to be invited? That explains it.
What?
Well, everyone is dressed weird. See, if I had been invited, I would have known this was a costume party.
Right.
It's the story of a girl from the valley who never dreamed she'd ever be seen with a boy from over here.
Like, I'm not getting out of this car.
All right, but when they attack the car, save the radio.
Julie's cool. Randy's hot. She's from the Valley. He's not. Valley Girl.
Okay, we have our Letterboxd HQ. It's letterboxd.com/thenextreel. Let's talk about our ratings of the film. How many stars did you give this film on Letterboxd?
It has been for years rated 2.5 stars by me at Letterboxd. I think I'm going to bump it up to 3 stars, Andy, because of you.
3 stars. Hey,
yeah,
I'll give it.
I'll give it a heart for the popped collars.
Oh, there you go.
And
there you
belts.
Go. For me, this came. I didn't have it ranked. I had it on Flickchart, but I hadn't watched it recently enough on Letterboxd to ever had it ranked. My memory probably would have put it in about that 2.5 rank. Rewatch. This is a 4-star film for me. I just really connected with it. I really was very impressed with what Amy Heckerling did with Cameron Crowe's, words. It just I loved this world. Absolutely something I'm going to return to. So. And then end up at a 3.5 stars with a heart over in our HQ over at letterboxd.com/thenextreel.
Great movie. Here we go. We're deep in it, Andy. 10th year, 80s comedies. We're off to the Valley next week.
So what did you think about Fast Times at Ridgemont High? We want to know. Hop into the Show Talk channel on Discord where we will be talking about this movie this week.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Letterboxd giveth, Andy.
As Letterboxd always do it.
Oh, my goodness. There are people who really feel like this is a movie about pedophilia, dirty old men. There are some rough reviews in here. I bring us a 0.5 star from reviewer Dumb Bitch, otherwise known as Bill Hader's Whore. If you want to follow them on Letterboxd.
Just because of their name.
But the reason I picked this one is because I have it as of right now. I've already watched both Valley Girl and the remake of Valley Girl. And the remake of Valley Girl is Dumb Bitch, otherwise known as Bill Hader's Whore's story. And I think it's fascinating. When we talk about it next week, you'll get it. This review says, here's another movie that my mom showed me from her teenage years that she loved. Maybe I'd have to grow up in this time period to appreciate this movie. And I have a lot of 80s pop culture and movies, but maybe just this isn't my thing. But I just don't get it. Maybe it isn't my type of humor, but quite literally, every time Sean Penn is on the screen, I want to punch him in the face. So I feel like it's possible somebody read this review and then went and made the remake of Valley Girl to try to assuage these concerns.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
I will definitely be thinking about that when I watch the original, and then hopefully I'll get the remake watched as well.
Lean in, man.
Yeah,
it's cheeky.
Well, I have a 1 star by Jacob R.F., who, I think kind of also, there's a lot of people who's like, it's all pedophilia, it's gross. And then a lot of people have something that feels a lot like this. I'm not convinced this movie was about anything. It just kind of happened for a while.
I'm sorry. I forgot to tell you that I'm also known as RF on Letterboxd. Thanks, Letterboxd. Andy, it's hard to believe we've been having weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
Oh, you're telling me. Producing this show week after week is so much fun, but it does require a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our Originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great discussions.
The Originals page at thenextreel.com/originals has links to purchase the source material behind our adapted film discussions. Your purchases there help support the show at no extra cost.
For the entirety of season 11, we featured films directed by women.
The only exceptions were some of our member bonus episodes.
We talked about The Lure for our horror debuts series, which is a very loose adaptation of The Little Mermaid by Hans Christian Andersen.
Definitely miles from the Disney versions.
For our 10-year anniversary series, we covered We Need to Talk About Kevin, taken from the Lionel Shriver novel.
Man, that was brilliant.
And horrifying.
Yeah. The Journalist series included Merrily We Go to Hell and The Weight of Water, adapted from Anita Shreve's bestseller.
We filled some gaps in previous series with member bonus episodes on adaptations like Malcolm X, Mr. Blandings Builds His Dream House, Cactus Flower, Wild at Heart, Life Force, and The Blues Brothers.
Our John Hurt series looked at a trio of adaptations: Chilly Scenes of Winter from the novel by Ann Beatty, Awakenings based on Oliver Sacks' nonfiction book, and Rambling Rose adapted from the Calder Willingham novel.
2 films in our coming-of-age debut series were adapted from books: The Virgin Suicides from Jeffrey Eugenides, and The Diary of a Teenage Girl, Phoebe Glockner's graphic novel.
We had Queen of Kotway for our sports series based on Tim Crothers' nonfiction book.
And Clueless kicked off our 90s comedy series, loosely adapted from Jane Austen's Emma.
It totally took place in the 90s, though. Find all of these books and more adaptations on our originals page at thenextreel.com/originals.
Start your next read from the movies we've covered. Visit thenextreel.com/originals today.